Back there at punt returner, apparently we learned earlier today that he had a conversation with Mike Shanahan, said any way to help the team. He's a guy who has experience but really hasn't been a regular returner since 2009. Gets one opportunity in the game on Monday night, has a 13-yard return. Is he a guy that you hang your hat on for the rest of the season?
Yes, absolutely yes. I mean, you've got 5 games to go. Who knows what the future holds? I think he's the best option at this punt return man right now, and he's done it before. He's got great hands, a veteran, going to make the right decisions. Absolutely yes.
He didn't drop the ball, and which was a huge
That
bonus.
is a standard of excellence.
And
right
if you if you go back and you look at the first punt, it went over his head. He dug his heels in at the 10. He watched it bounce. But he also did something that you don't see a young guy like Chris Thompson or Nick Williams do. He ran a little bit of interference with the gunner who was coming to down the ball at the 1 or 2 yard line. He kind of stood in front of him, grabbed a load of his jersey. And that was just enough to allow the ball to roll into the end zone, touchback at the 20 instead of starting at the 2.
Seems like a little thing, but, field position, and the Redskins have had horrible field position all year.
Yeah, it's not a little
long.
thing this season.
Yeah, it's been a bad year in terms of field position. And your special teams, I mean, if you can get a boost out of your special teams, it's such a plus. If you break even with your special teams, your offense can. But if you keep getting negative plays with your special teams, they're backbreakers. So they gave up a big return, but I thought overall that was probably their best special teams performance of the year. Niles Paul, a Cooley joke that I said on the air that he gets it out to the 20 every time.
He does.
But I mean, you're seeing earlier in the year to the 15 and the 13-yard line.
Yeah.
You've really seen that around the National Football League. I think the rule that puts those balls through the end zone because of the rule change last year just has these guys wanting to make plays. And to see a guy with a 109-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, I mean, he should have taken a knee. He got out of there and he got a touchdown, but you never saw that before.
I like Niles Paul back there because he's sure-handed, and like you said, he gets the ball to the 20. But the one thing that bugs me is he doesn't have that breakaway. I mean, he's fast. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he needs a hole. I mean, he needs a hole to see his speed. Have we seen him open? We've seen him open it up against Joe on the field over here.
You had to bring that up, didn't you, Larry?
My friend.
I will never live that down. But you know what? You're right. We haven't seen Niles get a big hole. But I don't know if that's the fault of the blockers in front of him or if he doesn't have that sixth gear to get to that hole.
Yeah, you're right.
I think in the offseason when they get that money back, let Niles play tight end and go get me a 5'9", returner who can actually find that hole and go 109 yards if they have to.
You mentioned matchups, and to look at the wide receivers of the New York Giants and to see, again, you're talking about a team that hadn't played well, had 4 good games in a row, but Cruz 4 touchdowns this year.
Right.
And they've had Nicks banged up. And Ruben Randall's on the scene now. I don't even know who they're playing at tight end. Bear Pasco is the tight end.
Right.
So, it's a matchup that this week I think favors the Redskins, despite what happened last week, despite the fact that Josh Wilson really was picked on by San Francisco. I think the Redskins defense can have a great game against the New York Giants on Sunday night. I really do.
Well, at least Madu Williams won't be able to forget about Victor Cruz in the slot. I mean, so.
I talked to D'Angelo Hall, actually, earlier this week. He's going to be on the cover of the Game Day magazine this week.
Cool.
And he was really looking
Is he really?
Yeah, he's the man. So
Resurgence.
Absolutely. It's the year of threes for him. 3 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. So, he's putting together a Pro Bowl resume this year. And he's really, he talked about it that last year they were trying to put him in matchups. They were trying to put him at free safety. They were trying to put him in the slot to be better than whoever he was covering. But the problem was that he was leaving, by putting him there, it was leaving the number 1 guy open. And so he said he was really looking forward to getting a matchup with Nicks, getting a matchup with Cruz, and shutting down that side of the field. I don't know if that's necessarily his style of play. I think that he's a much better playmaker with the football. But he certainly hasn't been burned this year. He's really been consistent throughout the season.
He's been a shutdown corner.
Yeah.
He's been a shutdown corner, and his maturity level has really impressed me. And I think the guy's a great player. He's a great guy, and I think you look at a guy who, in his own way, is a great leader. You think about leadership. I think a lot of young guys look up to him because he does have the swag. He does have a cockiness to him, but he's also very well spoken when he talks to the media. He has a message he wants to put out there, and he never shies away from an interview. As a matter of fact, he's never been on a microphone he doesn't like.
Right.
True.
So,
very true.
So I think he's had a great year, a Pro Bowl year. I agree with you, Brian.
Yeah.
All right. Another matchup that's kind of interesting. The Giants' offensive line has certainly had its injuries this year. They've had replacement guys put in there. But you lose a guy like Stephen Bowen. How much does that hurt? And do you really think that Kedrick Golston and Chris Baker can fill the void there?
I think so. I mean, because if you look at the way they run their substitutions anyway, I mean,
these guys have certainly been on the field.
They have played a lot this year, and I think Kendrick has been quietly one of the better reserves. I know he was a starter early on in the year. I think he's having a very good season. And Steven has played injured, and he's looked like a guy who's been playing injured the past several weeks.
Right.
So I think the fact that he's now out for the season and can go get the surgery and get healthy for next year, you know, it's certainly a loss because he's a leader and he is a good player. But I mean, he didn't have a sack this year. I mean, you know, he's a good run stopper. I don't think that's a huge issue, as big of an issue as it would have been, let's say, 2 years ago when Steven was playing at a Pro Bowl level.
And don't forget, I mean, obviously your outside linebackers are going to make an impact trying to get to Eli Manning.
Right.
And Brian Orakpo's playing the best football for him the last couple of years. I mean, he's been hurt a little bit.
That's a great sack last week.
Well, you know, you can't.
He was still there to make the play.
You know what?
Sack is a sack.
But I don't think you can deny that he is playing with an intensity right now. I think that coming off that injury, maybe the first couple games of the year, he was still not sure how far he could push it. And
He's
now
been really good in the run game too.
Real good in the run game, and he had some criticism earlier in the year. I think he's playing very well right now, and I think that's a matchup right now to see if the Redskins can get sacks on Eli Manning. I mean, he doesn't get sacked much.
Yeah.
He gets rid of the football, but his offensive line is not what it used to be, and the running game isn't what it used to be.
Right.
And that all adds together for an opportunity for the outside backers.
I like to see Ryan Kerrigan get on the board. He's a guy who, to me, I don't know if he's 100% healthy. He looks like a guy who's playing maybe like that knee that he got banged up early in the season isn't quite 100%. But you know, everyone's playing nicked up at this time of year.
Even you and me. We're nicked.
Absolutely. I mean, my right knee's a little sore with the weather. In all
I told you to
seriousness,
quit skating.
Exactly. I'd love to see him get back on the board with a sack or two.
Well, again, I think it's a good matchup this week for the Redskins defense. And from an offensive standpoint, you know, Robert's got to be protected. And you still have Tuck, you still have Pierre-Paul, despite the fact they're not having a great Giant-type year on that front four. I still think they're dangerous. And
Antrell Roll's having a big year. 5 interceptions.
They've had problems. Linebacker problems. The back end's been banged up, and Pierre-Paul coming off a back surgery.
Right.
But I think he's playing pretty well right now. I do think that we'll predict it on Friday, Tark, when you come on the show. But I think Redskins going to break this 3-game losing streak. I really believe it.
I think the other key here is that Trent Williams is also coming off probably his worst game of the season and his worst game in a long time. Mike Shanahan was very candid about that. He's a guy who's going to rise to the occasion because of that. I think that he had one of the worst second halves clearly on the team. So he's a guy that really needs a big game. I think he can do it.
He's another guy who doesn't look like he's playing at 100% to me. I went back and I watched the film, and the way he backed up, he looked stiff. There were a number of times where I saw him come to the sideline. He was shaking that wrist that's been bothering him since training camp. We talked to him a few minutes ago in the locker room, and it was funny when we asked him about his health. He was very coy. He was going to give us an answer, and then he goes, "Hey, everyone's banged up right now." He said his wrist isn't going to need surgery, but it's definitely bothering him.
I mean, everybody is banged up, and Giants are too. So let's tee it up.
Yep.
All right, division matchup. Never know how that's going to go, but remember to tune in Monday morning for the Monday Morning Redskins Roundup right here on Redskins.com and CSNWashington.com. For Larry and Tarek, I am Brian Tinsman. Thank you for tuning in for This Week at the Park.